Okay, good afternoon, everyone, or good morning or good evening from wherever you're calling in from. My name is Paul Robinson. I'm the Executive Director of RISE, and thank you for joining us for this webinar. Just a couple of notes up front. We've got three great panelists here today, which I'll be introducing shortly. These are folks who live in the Southwest Virginia community and are very involved with the flooding issues that they have there. But just a couple of upfront housekeeping notes. First of all, very important is that the application deadline for the challenge is May 5th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. That's a strict deadline. We cannot accept late applications, so don't start applying at 1:30 p.m. Give yourself some time, make sure everything goes okay. But that's a hard deadline, May 5th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. We will be having another webinar next Monday at 12:30, where we'll answer any final questions that anyone who's entering may have. There is a webinar recorded of me running through a lot of the details and the information that you need to know for this challenge, and that's available on our website. But I want to run through just a couple of slides here just to recap on a couple of things. We have 5 major topic areas on this challenge. We are looking for solutions in flood resilient, affordable landscape and building adaptations for design or retrofit. And again, more information is on our website in these. We're looking for solutions in the early warning systems to alert of significant flooding events and provide avoidance guidance. That's an end-to-end alerting and warning system. We are also looking for other region-wide and community-based insurance and support programs for these communities to help them recover from these events. 2 new ones that we've added to this challenge is we're looking for integration of the Riverine Community Resilience products. We're not telling anyone to work with anyone else, but for these communities out there, they are resource limited, and it's going to be a much better fit for them if there's some integration between the products, the different products that they are interested in adopting and running in their operations. And finally, this certainly came to the fore after Helene last September, and also the storm that they had in that region in February. We want to find programs and processes by which businesses can recover quickly and be helped to recover after these events and bring their employees back to work and get back to revenue generation. Very important for the small communities to keep their employees employed. And we saw a number of towns and businesses in these towns after the events had to go and take out a loan, an SBA loan and other types of loans to get back on track. And that's not a very attractive option. So we are looking for solutions there to help these businesses get back on track. Again, challenge timeline, not to sound like a broken record, but this is very important. We launched on March 27th, excuse me. March 5th, 2 p.m. is our submission deadline. We will announce the finalists on March 7th, 2025. That's a pretty compressed schedule, but we need to do that. Those finalists will have till May 14th to submit additional documentation and get ready to pitch to our selection committee. And by May 25th, we will announce our winners and the funding levels associated with that. And just as another reminder, we will be having a final webinar next Monday at 12:30 Eastern Time to answer any final questions. And there's a QR code takes you to our website and other information, including the webinar that I recorded. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen here. One thing for all of our folks who are attending and listening in, if you have any questions or you want to raise your hand and ask a question, put the question in the chat or raise your hand. Katie here is watching closely the screen here, so she'll bring you in. This is your chance to talk to some folks who are extremely knowledgeable in and around flooding events, and I'll introduce them now to you in no particular order, but we'll start with Debbie. Debbie's Director of Planning at Cumberland Plateau PDC. She's been a Director of Planning since 2021. She's got an extensive background in grant writing, project management, and holds BAs in social science and business administration. Debbie has been involved in our challenge program from the beginning and has been super helpful in guiding us and directing us towards the people we need to talk to and in formulating the challenge. Also from Cumberland Plateau is Bart Chambers. He's a building official and emergency management coordinator in Buchanan County. Bart's been the emergency management coordinator for Buchanan County for 11 years and building official for 12 years. Prior to that, Bart was spent 16 years a building contractor in Charleston, South Carolina, and before coming back to Buchanan County. Terry Nicholson is the town manager of the town of Narrows. Bart has been the town manager since 2022. Previously served as code enforcement officer and building inspector in the city of Radford. He's got a lot of interest here. He studied a Master of Architecture at Virginia Tech, focusing on historic preservation. All three of these folks have been involved in pilot programs from our first Riverine Challenge. And again, I emphasize that these folks are here for your questions and your answers. Please put your questions in the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen, or raise your hands, and we'll bring you in as soon as we can. But this time is for you. I have some questions which I'm going to start discussion with. But remember, these discussions need to have the audience involved, and please bring up your questions to these folks. What I'd like to start with Debbie and to talk about Hurricane Helene and the event in February. But let's start with the event, the Hurricane Helene event. Debbie, can you tell us how much? Just walk us through sort of step by step how much advance notice you had for Helene, and during the event, what did you do? What could you do? And then afterwards, how long before you could get to the folks and help them?
Well, the storm hit really quickly. Usually hurricanes do not come in to Virginia this far, so it was very unexpected. The weather forecast was predicting some heavy rains, but 7 inches in an hour is unheard of. And when that happens to places like Buchanan County, where you have mountains and then ravines, and all the water runs down to a certain point, and it causes flash flooding, and it causes mudslides, and it causes all of these things to happen. And the folks in Buchanan County, they're used to flooding and rain, but this was much worse. And two, you can't get the word out. You can't prepare. There's really no preparing for it. And once it was over with, people started trying to get into the people to see how, if who was hurt. And it just the trees were all down. There was no electricity. There wasn't any water for anyone or anything. And so it was just a really terrible event. And Buchanan County's been hit, I don't know, 4 times since 2001, I think it is, with that kind of flooding. And And what happens once, you get in, the folks over there are great to respond. They do the best they can to get to everyone. But, money does not become available quickly. I've told Paul in the past, if it hadn't been for Buchanan County and the social services and all the things who moved quickly and got people in, out of the water and into temporary places to stay and stuff like that. I don't know what they would have done. And, that's the thing that I do. I write grants and I try to get money to help rebuild and do things like that. But that takes a while. That's a process. It doesn't happen quickly. And that is really a huge problem for the folks over there that go through this. So, I mean, if you have no money and you have no home and and help's months away, what are you supposed to do? So that's been my experience.
And Bart, that's from the emergency management perspective of what Debbie's talking about. What were you seeing prior to Helene, and what could you do, and what were you able to do, and when afterwards?
Well, I mean, we were prepared for it as much as we could be prepared for it.
Yeah.
I mean, we knew it was coming to a certain extent. We just didn't know exactly when. And like
Did you
Debbie
know?
was mentioning, we get flash floods here, and they're just so fast. And
Did you know which towns were going to get flooded, or you just knew roughly within a certain region?
well, I mean, we got a pretty good idea because, as she said a minute ago, we've had 4 floods since 2001, and our rivers and streams just keeps getting filled up and filled up with debris.
Yeah.
For instance, the 2002 flood we had that we lost 80 homes, we had 7.5 inches of rain. The next one, we had 6 inches of rain. This one, it only took 4 inches of rain.
Yeah.
And until we can get some mitigation and some cooperation with people, and the next time, I'm afraid it's going to take 2 inches of rain, which is not very much. And they keep getting progressively worse and worse and worse. That's my biggest fear, is if we don't do some type of mitigation here, we're going to be in trouble. And we're already in trouble, but we're going to have to get, our waterways cleaned out to where the water can flow. So.
Yep. Terry, you want to talk about your encounter, your town's encounter with Helene?
Sure. So we had similar problems to what Debbie and Bart were saying. Again, Helene came through, and we on Friday night were being forecasted to have a crest of the river that ended up being at about, well, they were predicting about 30 feet for us. And that was on Friday night. So we had prepared as best we could, anticipating that 30-foot mark. It ended up during Friday night that the Claytor Lake Dam was concerned about a dam upstream from them, the Billsby Dam, failing. And so Claytor Lake on Friday night opened their dam. And so the crest for us occurred 4 feet higher than it had been forecast to be. And it was about 16 hours earlier than it had been forecast to be. And so that ended up causing inundation in areas that we had not expected it to hit us. And so we had to deal with that. We had a number of road closures. We have a bridge over the New River that is a major state route, and we had to close that bridge because one end of it was underwater. We were actually very close to needing to close US 460, which is a 4-lane highway that goes through town. We fortunately did not have to do that, but like Debbie was saying, we were scrambling then to deal with those issues of the unanticipated height of the water. Fortunately, we had been proactive in getting people out of the areas that we knew were going to flood. So we didn't have any people in danger, but we had property in danger that we had not anticipated was going to be. So I'll stop there. But
Bart, how soon after the flooding events are you able to get your folks into help and or see what the needs are of the communities after one of those events?
So it literally took, like, this all started happening about 2:30 that evening, give or take. I can't remember the exact time. It was around 2:30 when the calls first started coming in. It was 6 o'clock the next morning, so 15, 16 hours before we could even get to places. And if it hadn't been for local people bringing their heavy equipment, because we're obviously a big coal mining community here, so everybody's got, big equipment, and the local people, because VDOT couldn't really do anything. We were not staffed to get there, so we actually had local residents and their big inloaders and stuff to just go down the road and scrape the road so we could get emergency personnel there. So it was 15 hours before we could even get to some of the areas that were most heavily hit, just to be able to help the people.
And were people communicating with your EOC?
Yes, we had them on. We could speak to them, but we couldn't get to them. That was the frustrating part. They would be screaming on the phone, because I was sitting in the EOC the whole time. There's water getting up on the second floor of my house, and there's 9 people in here on the second floor, and we couldn't get there. I mean, we had Swiftwater, we had the Virginia State Police Swiftwater Rescue teams. I think we had 2 of those here. We have our own Swiftwater Rescue team. I think we had another one out of Roanoke maybe here. Yeah. And there was like 4 Swiftwater Rescue teams, but we couldn't get them to where they needed to go. And then what happens here is we only got one 4-lane highway going through here. Our roads were blocked, and it gets backed up, and then you have just people backed up in these piles with these mudslides, and then we can't get the equipment there to clear the mudslides. It's very chaotic, and I mean, it is what it is. We're kind of used to it, but yes, the cell phones never went down, luckily, so we did have cell service at our EOC and at dispatch, but the only thing we could do is just listen to their cries, and unfortunately, that's a hard thing to do.
That's very good. And Debbie, you were able to you were working with United Way, right?
Oh yes, United Way. I mean, they were all already established during the flood about 4 years ago, was it, Bart? I'm trying to remember. So they had a very successful long-term recovery team that they had set up and everything. And honestly, they were the first ones to be able to take donations. They were the first ones to be able to just really find out about the people that were in the homes, what they'd lost, how bad their situation was, and that sort of thing. And they ended up sort of being, far as being able to get any money on the ground, United Way was one of the first ones.
Yeah. We've got a question here from Casey Wilson asking about water quality monitoring. Is monitoring the quality of the water and pollutants a priority in terms of drinking water sources and flood water? So I guess Terry or Bart, is that a concern on your part?
Yes, so the majority of our people are on, public service authority water here, and it was like, I think it took over 2 weeks, maybe like 2.5 weeks, just to get the water back to people. And every day we monitored the word I'm looking for, it was monitored to make sure that it was drinkable. And once you did get water, we were under a boil notice for a week and a half or so. But yes, every day we sent off samples to be tested for the water quality.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a different situation for us in that our PSA does not draw water from the river. We actually use wells for our water. And so we were not concerned about the drinking water. Our situation dealt with our wastewater. So our wastewater treatment plant was underwater. And so we were sending raw sewage to the river for a day and a half or so. And so that was the main concern for us. And we did not have access to the plant at all because the plant was so inundated. So your question about monitoring the quality of the water and pollutants is a priority. And of course, as Bart was talking about here locally, as I said, we draw our water from wells, but Montgomery County, a neighboring county, draws from the river, and they were fighting turbidity for a week, 2 weeks after the event because of all the debris in the water and the sediment that had been pushed into the water. So that is a major concern that communities do need to consider.
Yeah.
Um, I would like to go back to one of the things that Debbie was talking about as well with volunteers. You were talking about the aid that you were getting there. One of the things that I found very quickly is my phone started ringing immediately to say, you know, I'm with such and such a church and I've got a group of volunteers. What do you need us to do? And at that point, I'm still in assessment mode, you know, trying to figure out what's damaged, how bad it is, you know, where people are, those kinds of things. It took us a couple of days, but we did end up setting up a 1 point contact where anybody that wanted to volunteer could go to that contact, and anybody that needed volunteers could also go to that contact. We did it with a website, a program. So that was something that was really critical that we did not have set up in advance, and now is part of our emergency management plan that we will have the kind of community group contacts that we can get in touch with people and direct them where we need them.
Okay. Well, we've got another question here in the Q&A. How do the panelists quantify the readiness levels of residents in your counties? How do you know how ready they are? Are they prepared? How do you get them prepared? Debbie?
Well, you know, they're used to this, is what I can tell you. But when there's one road, one way in and one way out, there's not much they can do. You know, that's the problem. Ready, you know, I think you think 100-year flood, you don't expect to have four, you know, flood events in, you know, 20 years. So I really don't think that they are prepared for it. That's my opinion. What do you think, Bart? I don't think they, you know they can't get out. They can't. What can they do?
Our residents, I'm not saying I don't know. I think we got some prepared residents because if we didn't, if you could see the devastation that the water did here in Buchanan County in the last 4 years, we lost one life. So to say that they're not prepared would be just not true, I don't think, because if, you know, when we got waters that are 60 and 70 foot deep rushing, and we have one in the Gesses Fork flood, you know, we lost 80 homes. The hard part with Gesses Fork for me, being the building official, doing the assessment part, was there's no phone service over there, so we can't even find the homes. There's no maps, there's no nothing. So I get over there to do my assessments, and I'm lost because there's homes you can't even find the foundation for some of these homes. And the Whitewood flood the same way. So not saying that the county prepared these people. I don't want to take praise for that. It's just living in Buchanan County, you're prepared for floods. I mean, that's just, we grew up like this, and it's just the way it is. And, you know, you store food back and you rely on your neighbors and your family, and that's just the way it is here. So I don't want to say that the county provided, you know, preparedness, but I think the people were used to it. And so, I mean, I think that's my answer for that.
One of the things that I noticed is because we have had a number of recent flood events as well, similarly to you guys, in the last 20 years, we've had 5 different flood events that have been significant floods, but they were not nearly as bad as this last one was. And so what I have found is that our residents are used to the flooding and they know what they need to do for a certain level of flooding, but this one was far worse. And so we kind of have reached this curve of where people were prepared for the minor flooding that they are used to in their lifetimes, but this one was far worse. And so now I think we're on the other side of that hump. So next time we tell our residents that flooding is happening, they're going to be erring on the side of caution rather than saying, I don't need to move that stuff. It doesn't usually get that high. I think this has been a learning curve for us, and we're on the side of the curve now that we're going to be even more cautious than we typically would be.
And we have a question here. I think I know the answer to it. What level of flood insurance the residents have in the area? Does anyone have any flood insurance, or is it
less than 5%?
Yeah,
I would say. Like, again, the Gessie Sport flood, we lost 80 homes. I think you might have had 3 people that had flood insurance. Whitewood had a little bit more. I don't think they would have cracked the 10% mark. And
yeah,
this time, the flood that we just had, the last one, it took some houses out, but nothing like the other ones did. It just washed access out and roads and bridges and stuff. That's what this last one did.
So what's the reason of for this low flood insurance adoption, or is it obvious?
I'm assuming it's obvious. We're just a very poor county, and the majority of the people here have inherited the houses, and once you have no mortgage on the house, the bank don't require you to have any kind of insurance on it. So to save themselves and the cost, from what I understand, I don't live in a flood zone, so I don't know the cost of flood insurance. I have heard that it's doubles or sometimes triples the price for flood insurance. And at the end of the day, people just can't afford it.
Yeah, and that's true here in Narrows as well. Narrows sits at the confluence of the New River and Wolf Creek and Mill Creek. So we got 3 streams of water that flow through our town. And even so, in a population of 2,000 people, we have 8 people that have flood insurance.
Yeah.
So
just to switch gears a little bit here, you are all involved in pilot programs with the RISE Riverine, the first Riverine Challenge. What was it that got you involved? Or interested in these pilot programs? Was it interest in the topic area? Was just a need to find some different way of doing things, or what were your thoughts in that?
Well, for me, I like the idea. Either, you can either pay up front and try to help with prevention or with insurance or with something, as opposed to always paying at the end and reacting to things. So I like the idea of some possible ways to help with before it happens. And I was curious to see what might be some of the answers to those questions. That's what made me really want to be a part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the same for me here in Narrows. We were interested in looking at a couple of things. The total cost of risk was one of the things. I was in the throes of dealing with FEMA and the cost benefit analysis, which if you've ever done that with FEMA looking towards mitigation, it's a laborious process in order to go through that. And it's really hard to prove a benefit cost-wise for what you're trying to do to mitigate risk. So that was one aspect of it. And the other aspect of it is just pushing insurers, like Debbie's saying, towards mitigation rather than just dealing with the emergency after it's happened.
Yeah. And I'll just jump in here just in the very last minute. We do have a question here about do you have, I guess this is to Bart, real-time information about water levels on the roadways to make decisions where to get swift water teams and other first responders? Is that an area of interest to you, Bart?
It is, but it happens so fast.
Yeah.
And we rely on calls, I guess, physical calls to come in, and we pretty much know where it's going to happen at.
Yeah.
So we know, because it happens over and over so much. We really know the areas that are going to get hit the worst. So
Yeah.
that's pretty much where we keep them set at. And the river gauges and stuff like that, those are extremely wonderful tools. And I'm going to say it like this: they're great tools to watch it and pretty much know when it's getting ready to happen. But when it actually happens,
yeah,
all tools are out the window. It's all hands on deck. How can we get there? And it's chaos. And one of the things I remind everybody is, hey, first thing, you need to take a deep breath. Calm down. We can't help anyone unless we're calm. Because if you could hear some of the things at dispatch, it's people panic, and that's just the way it is. But we have to remain calm as first responders. And yes, we do use their river gauges. Yes, we do use their flood gauges. But when that moment happens, we don't have time to sit down and look and pull up our river gauges and see what they are.
Yeah.
We're at time here. I want to thank Terry, Debbie, and Bart for joining us. Thank you for your expertise. Thank you for your participation in the program. We could not do this program without you, so I greatly appreciate it. I'd like to thank everyone who has joined us and who asked questions and for listening in. Please keep your questions coming. We'll see what we can do in getting them out to other to subject matter experts. And if you have any questions about the program, please reach out to us prior to the submission date. And we'll be having another webinar on Monday, an informational webinar, and I'll answer any final questions. Thank you, everyone, for participating. Thank you so much.